Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of the Red River Roundup right here on 446 Sports. We're presented by Gridiron Football Group, and we'll have Jace Lejeune come on at 8:45 and represent Gridiron Football Group for us and cover the Baton Rouge area. But we've got a few games today on Saturday, as we always do, but we're through 4 weeks of the regular season. A few teams actually getting into district play a little bit this week, but for the most part, first week in October next week, just about all over the state, teams will be in district play. So this was the last week for a lot of teams to get those bragging rights, flex their muscles, or do whatever it was they needed to do in the non-district season to get PowerPoints, to simulate long road trips. We've seen plenty of that going north to south, east to west, and out of state so far in the non-district season. So for a lot of teams, this was a key week, because once you get into district, there's no control over who's on that schedule. It's made for you, and it's there every year. So week 4 for a lot of teams, week 3 or 4 is the last kind of chance to schedule who it is that you wanted to see early on in the season. And, September football is kind of its own style. It's a lot hotter in September. Usually it's good weather. We've seen a lot of offense around the state so far this year. So it's a key week. District season is always exciting because those rivalries, those matchups, and coaches, players, fans are familiar with each other. But last night and Thursday night as well, kind of a key week for teams all around the state. So let's go through a few scores. Coming up at 8:15, Mike McMillan will join us from the Northshore Prep Report. But want to start off in Sinlawn around 446. 446 Sports had a good week on our airwaves. Thursday night, Tioga got a really nice win, 54-30 over Richwood. Case Malone, their QB, really commanding that offense. Got to watch a little bit of that game. Indians looked really good against the Richwood Rams on Thursday. Grant Cougars, for the second time in this season, have gone over 70 points. Cougars with a 76-40 win over the Vidalia Vikings last night. Didn't get a chance to look at any stats there. I'm sure Ahmad Sykes was a part of that as well. And that offense continues to put up points and got a winning record going into district. Ash 59-6 over Opelousas. Got to watch a little bit of this game while we were on the air last night with Union and Green Oaks. Ash, a dominant win over a team that's been in the Superdome in recent seasons, Opelousas. This was, I believe, a homecoming game for Ash. Looked like started off a little slow, just kind of going through the motions, needing to wake up. But they did that early. Alex Fontenot with another long touchdown. Noble Williams, I believe, got in the end zone, had some long runs. And Jakir and Griffin had a few big plays on offense. Defensively, the same guys that you're used to making plays just stood up Opelousas. Similar to the first half of Destrehan, Ash's defense didn't allow Opelousas to get really anything going. Carson Sellers did a good job of spreading the ball around. They had a lot of, similar to Destrehan, where they got up within the 10-yard line and had to punch it in from a few yards out. Did that plenty of times. Another really great showing for Ash as they head into their district season. Menard with a really nice win over Abbeville. That was a kind of a defensive game. Both teams held under 20 points. The Menard Eagles off to a good start. They'll go into district with a good record as well. St. Mary's, this was very surprising win. St. Mary's comes up with a 32-28 win over Manny, program that's used to winning a lot. St. Mary's under Kevin C. Strunk, getting things going in the Natchitoches area, but that's a really great quality win for them last night. Turlings 28, Westgate 15. Turlings continues to start hot in the regular season. They're right atop those 4A polls, anywhere you slice it. Turlings Catholic Rebels off to a great start. They'll be on 446 Monday night, the Coach Corville show right here on 446 Sports. But congrats to Turlings getting that win. The one loss on 446 airwaves over the weekend, Buckeye had their homecoming game of Wolves Mustangs, came in there and able to get a win there against the Buckeye Panthers. But other than that, 6-1 week for 446 Sports, and I'll make that my head turner of the week, my head turning stat of the week. Good job by all those teams. couple other scores from around the Sinlaw area. Marksville is 4-0. They get a 40-7 win over Port Barry Tigers. And Bunkie Panthers also undefeated. They got a win last night. So did Avoyelles. So playing some good football in Avoyelles Parish this weekend. Faraday, they are winners 50-6 over Delhi Charter. Again, see them kind of in the two-way polls starting to sneak in there right at the outside of our Sinlaw area. So we like to keep an eye on Faraday when we can. Gina remains undefeated. They get a 30-point victory over Winfield, 52-22. And I believe usual suspects for Gina had a good night offensively. Cedric Wilson, Deuce McPherson, Daniel Hatcher, Darian Cooper. Those skill players, you'll hear their name every week because the Giants have racked up yards and points every week. But that offensive line, got to watch them a little bit at the Bayou Jam. Gina's as good this year as they've, as that semifinal team from a couple years ago, in my opinion. So if they can continue to perfect what it is that they do really well on offense, defense continues to play tough. Coach Roark has those Gina Giants looking just like we're used to seeing them in the past few years and really over the past decade since him and his staff have been there. So another dominant game in the trenches for Gina, and they'll move on with a win over Winfield. And one other score from Sinlaw Pineville with a 28-21 victory over Leesville. That was a home game at Pineville. Rebels in that district with Ash, West Monroe, Neville, Ruston, Ouachita. A really good win for them last night. And again, they'll go into district with a couple wins under their belt as well. A couple other scores that I want to get you from around the state, particularly in the northern part of the state. Evangel 51, Airline 49. I predicted that both teams would score over 50, so it's off by one. Eagles get past the Vikings, and I think that might have been a late score for Evangel to go up. So two teams that are top 10 teams in 5A will be big factors in Division I once the playoffs come. We'll keep an eye on both those schools as we keep moving through. North DeSoto, 52-26 over Northwood. That was a game with two undefeated teams. I've got to watch North DeSoto a few times over the past few years. And this year, it's early, might be one of their strongest teams that they've had under Dennis Dunn here recently with these past several seasons with Luke Delafield at quarterback. They are as talented as they've ever been, but what they've been able to do through the first month of the season on the scoreboard has been super impressive. Griffins will be in that district with Loyola, Minden, schools like that. So this is a really, really good North DeSoto team. Would love to see Coach Dennis Dunn make a run if he can. They had a really great season a couple years ago, a long winning streak, went deep in the playoffs in non-select Division II. So they continue to flex their muscles, and they remain undefeated. Iowa 35 over Wassman. Iowa is still undefeated as well. One of the teams that Chasten Tavares predicted could go undefeated in the regular season. So they make the long trip up to Ouachita Parish, get the win over Wassman. St. Thomas More and Neville. Neville lost this game 27-23 to St. Thomas More, but Neville had a big lead in this game. So two teams in 2 weeks in a row for Neville. They go to Mississippi last week, dealing with a lightning delay and a challenging game there. They take the loss. And then having a big lead over St. Thomas More, and the Cougars came back and won that one. So Neville enters District 2 5A play with a 2-game losing streak, so they'll kind of have to regroup. They did lose a lot, from last year to this year, but it's Neville. Their roster is going to be stacked, and they're going to have what they need to compete in that district. But be interesting to see how they're able to shake back from two-game losing streak against two really quality teams. But we'll keep an eye on the Tigers too, and we'll see plenty of them throughout the season. One of the games of the night across the state last night, West Monroe 27, Catholic High 24. I said before the season, did get to watch a little bit of West Monroe in the Bayou Jam, but I figured with Coach DeMichael Dizer that his presence, being on that staff previously with the Rebels on the strength and conditioning side and coming in as the head coach, I had a feeling that he would be worth a couple extra wins for West Monroe, and last night was one of them. Catholic High juggernaut. Anytime any team can beat them, doesn't matter what school it is. That's a great win over Catholic High, and the West Monroe Rebels get it done. A close, hard-fought game. They got, I think, a touchdown pass within the 10-yard line with just a few minutes left to go, and able to get the win there. So big win for the Rebels over the Bears. Sterlington, 49-8 over West Washita, the defending champs in non-select Division III. They roll on, and I think pretty sure St. James had a equally dominant win last night in their game. So those are two teams that'll be right at the top of Division III non-select. Yeah, St. James 54-0 over Ponchatoula. So those are the two teams that met in the finals there last year on a collision course to make another deep playoff run in Division III non-select. A Thursday night game that I got to watch a good bit of, Ruston 49, Midland 21. I think Ruston could have probably won by an even larger margin. It's really incredible what they are doing right now. Early on, I would say, and it is early, haven't played any games yet, but I would think Ruston looks so far like the favorite in District 2-5A. Ahmad Hudson, go watch him if you haven't had a chance to. He gets plenty of coverage all over the state, and he deserves it. But I got to watch some of him last night, or Thursday night, excuse me. He's unbelievable, listed at 6'8", listed as a tight end, good basketball player too. He's a absolute blue chip recruit. Dad played basketball at LSU, and it was a pleasure to get to watch Ahmad Hudson and the Ruston Bearcats on Thursday night. They continue their tour of the South. They'll play anybody, anywhere. And again, 49-21 over Midland. I think they probably could have scored more if they wanted to. Mangum 49, Beekman 19. The Dragons, usually a contender in their playoff bracket, but they've really looked impressive so far early on with the points they've been able to put up. Got a great coaching staff over in Richland Parish with the Dragons this year. So that was one of the teams that I certainly wanted to keep an eye on in Division IV non-select. Oak Grove 50, Rabel 18. Oak Grove had a tough week 1 loss against Calvary, but they've rattled off 3 wins in a row, replacing a lot of senior leadership from last year, but always nice to keep an eye on the Oak Grove Tigers as they get a big win on Thursday night. So looking at that District 2-5A that we cover a lot here at 446, Ash dominant last night over Opelousas. Ruston dominant Thursday night over Midland. Neville with some tough games. They've taken some losses here. Washita Lions looked really good again. They get another win in the non-district season as well. So with West Monroe getting that real just a heck of a win last night against Catholic. I don't think that district is, in any way fallen short of what we thought it would be during the regular season, which is just a mosh pit of teams that in these past few seasons are used to this, are used to being as good as they are. Ash will take on Manny next week, and then they will open district against West Monroe. So that will be a game to follow for sure, as West Monroe looks to be riding high after that win off at Catholic High. And we're going to take this opportunity and bring on from the Northshore Prep Report, Mike McMillan. And Mike, need to get to you a minute early here because there is stuff all over the North Shore that I want to get to. Some really great games starting on Thursday night, and some games that you probably were surprised at. Certainly surprised me. I want to start with Slidell versus Mandeville. Coming into week 4, North Shore Prep Report reported that Slidell had the top passer, the top rusher, the top tight end, and the second leading wide receiver in St. Tammany as far as yardage. Ricky Williams, Jaquan Jones, Jeremiah Birdlow, and Carlos Fleming's in that order. And without looking at the individual stats, looks like Slidell put the North Shore on notice last night.
It was a night, man. I was getting blown up. I coach at North Lake, and we were playing Lakeshore, and I had to actually take my watch off in like the third quarter and throw it to the bench because it just kept buzzing because everybody's sending me stuff. But it was wild. We had Roger Glenn there covering the game for us, and he said that it kind of went as we expected it to go, just on the outside and in the talent level, right, of athletes. He said that he was really waiting to see Jeremiah Birdlow, and Bird had a big game. He had a touchdown catch in the back of the end zone and a couple other catches. But Carlos Flemings Jr. once again pops off. He has like 2 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they're kind of hitting on all cylinders. Their running back, Jaquan Jones, I believe ran the ball 30 times for 150 yards. So another big night for him. He's averaging around that 150 mark every night. And I'm impressed with Coach Page and those guys on wanting to go run the football. I thought that was the key to win. They can throw it and they can sling it, but their defense has struggled a little bit. So for them to go run the ball 30 times with Jaquan Jones showed me that, it's a smart coaching staff. They know what they're doing.
So you mentioned Roger Glenn covering that game. I saw he had a tweet last night that said, "Wow, just wow." And you might know what score I'm talking about: Northshore over Covington.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say I'm surprised, right? Because I'm very high on Covington. Everybody knows how high I am on Covington, especially their defense. Their quarterback, Matthew Fissell, has been phenomenal all season. But you say this, if you look at the games they've played, they've had some outings where he ran the ball really well but didn't throw it well, or threw the ball really well. They didn't run it that much. They only ran, I think, 31 plays last night. I think they had 18 attempts passing. I think Fussell was 6 of 18, and they ran the ball like 15 times. So Northshore dominated the ball on the ground. Ramon Williams, he ran the ball 30 times for 180 yards last night against a really good Covington defense. But if we look back to last week, I think, and Roger Glenn had posted this because he covered that last week for us, that Northshore Lakeshore game. That's a close game. It was 14-13, and Lakeshore kind of pulls away at the end, but Ramon Williams only had 4 carries in the second half. He had like 10 carries for 80 yards in the first half. So I think they found something there. They know a little bit of their identity on offense, right, and what they want to do, and it's working really well for them. So I'm really proud of Coach Sanders. I talked to him a little bit earlier this week. They were 0-3, but they're young. They're still young. So he's got a good thing going there, man. Huge win for those guys. Covington's going to be fine. That whole district, is going to be really good. It's going to be one to watch down in the stretch for sure.
Yeah, Covington gets a chance to get right again next week against Fontainebleau. Franklinton, we've talked about them probably just about every conversation that we've had this year. Jacob Crane, love that story, on a mission to get right back to the Superdome. And I love a guy like that literally grew up under those lights at that stadium, and he deserves all the success and all the accolades. But it's not just Jacob Crane. It's Jaden Burkhalter. It's DeMikey's McLean. It's Coach Salt. They cruised to a win over Fontainebleau, and I believe had their starters out, for a good portion of the second half. But tell me more. Again, like I said, love talking about Jacob Crane as kind of that all-state guy. But tell me who else on this Franklinton squad deserves credit for how well they're doing again this year.
Well, I'll tell you who's been impressive is their running back, Ricardo Beers. He had a huge game last week. I think he ran for 160 yards, another like 30 carry game, right? So last year, if you watched Franklinton, they had a running back who was absolutely phenomenal. He ran for over 2,000 yards, and he was a big part of their offense and how they ran it and what they did. Ricardo's kind of taking that torch and running with it, which has been good for Jacob in the passing game. But maybe more impressive is, DeMikey's McLean, to me, he's one of the best, receivers around. But what Jaden Burkhalter's doing, he's a junior. Coach Saul was really high on him in the preseason. I think you're going to see him at quarterback next year, just kind of as an athlete. But he had, I believe, at least 2 touchdown catches Friday against Fontainebleau. So an interesting thing, Marshall, and what they do, and I got to watch a lot of that game Thursday night because, I didn't have anything going on there. But they line up Burkhalter and McLean on the same side of the ball almost every snap. So it's really hard to play man over top or double coverage any of them. So it's a neat concept, and they're really good. And you have to give their defense credit. They've got some big guys coming back, a lot of all district guys. They're good on the back end. They're good up front. They're tough Franklinton kids, and they take Coach Salt's personality a little bit, and it goes a long way.
Yeah, they've again, I've had my eyes on them just because that 1 seed, it's natural to kind of front run with the Demons a little bit, but again, love the success that Jacob Crane and his family have experienced there in the past couple of seasons. It's so well deserved, and it's a perfect high school football story. A great matchup last night, and we got a few more to get to. Lakeshore and North Lake Christian. That's two coaches. I think Coach Indes has been there about 4 years. James Willis, 5+. Titans get the win with North Lake looking at last year, a really good regular season, coming off an Episcopal loss in 2024, coming into this game versus last week. After this point, I believe North Lake, had a chance to run the table there last year. Yeah. If they can do that after this week, again, it will be because what?
Well, because they've identified who they are on offense, running the ball, and Coach Willis is big on that. They run a lot of what they call Wolverine packages, everybody else is Wildcat, but that's, Cam Casnave in the backfield. They were able to, and I'll tell you a little bit about that game last night. First and foremost, hats off to Coach Indes once again. I say it all the time, they do what they do, and they do it really well. They ran quarterback power last night, which felt like to me 235 times, and we just couldn't stop it. Brody Loudermilk ran for 193 yards last night, their quarterback. They didn't throw it much. North Lake did, kind of threw it on the outside a little bit. It wasn't a big game for Cam, just because of how Lakeshore's defense is, and they kind of stack the box on you. But North Lake drives first drive, misses a field goal, kind of a wonky snap, right? Misses a field goal. Lakeshore goes down and scores. It's a 14-8 game at halftime. And, we go into half at North Lake and we're like, hey, we got them, right? We got them where we want them. And North Lake was in the red zone 3 times and got no points out of it. So a missed field goal, an interception, and a turnover on downs. I'm interested to see it. I'll find out for next week, but I don't know that North Lake might not have had almost the same amount, if not more yardage than Lakeshore, which to me is very impressive for North Lake, right? Like their ability to go play a team like Lakeshore, a 4A school, and compete like that. Coaches don't want to hear that, but waking up this morning, is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, and look, if you know anything about football in St. Tammany, there's that podium is stacked. There's only so many teams that can stand up there. So, Wolverines year in and year out, punching up above their weight, not afraid to take on Hannon, not afraid to play Lakeshore, and not afraid to stack up their athletes with anybody there.
Yeah, they've got a Bro Bridge next week on a Thursday, and then come back home for Kennew Discovery, and then kind of get in their district play, which it's going to kind of be between them and Pope John Paul. Pope got a big win last night that they needed. Gets them back at 500 at 2-2 for Coach Poggett.
Another big win over this week. Hammond was dominant over Higgins. You talked about the tours a little bit last week, but tell us why Hammond is for real.
Well, look, first and foremost, I have to give Coach Buckles credit. When I go visit those guys, he runs a first-class organization, and he holds those kids accountable. It's some of the best group of young men that I've ever been around. They're extremely respectful. They're polite. They're kind. They're motivated. They know what they want. Last week, Reginald Monroe, his nickname's Donut, he returned a punt, a kick return for a touchdown. Well, Thursday night, he returns 2 punts for a touchdown as well as a receiving touchdown. So their quarterback, Taryn Jones, is going to continue to improve and get better and better. They've got a really good running back. And then I cannot believe that the recruiting rankings don't have this guy shooting up. But Alante Beauchamp, he's a defensive end linebacker for them. He was sitting at 9 sacks through 3 games. He had 3.5 more sacks last night. He's got 12.5 sacks through 4 games. He had 17 sacks last year as a sophomore. Marshall, he's 6'2", 225. His arms go to his knees. Like, he's different. He's different. He's going to be a big-time recruit. And in fact, I need to send Lejeune a couple messages and say, hey, man, get over to Hammond, dude. Like, there's a guy over there who's really good.
Yeah, we'll they're on notice, with what they've done so far in this non-district season.
Well, in Marshall, they did it last year, right? I think they were, I believe they were 5-1 going into their last 4 games. They lost 3 in a row, kind of big, to St. Paul's, Mandeville, and Covington. So it's kind of lining themselves up to do some damage this year and be a little different. Ponchatoula hasn't won a game yet, so we'll see how that goes. But everybody else is sitting at 3-1 in that entire district.
A few other kind of getting away from the North Shore a little bit. Jewel Sumner, I believe, still undefeated. I know there was a really good game between Brother Martin and Jesuit last night that came down to a field goal, I think a 38-yard field goal at the buzzer. What did I miss this week in your area?
Well, look, Brother Martin, Eastern Royal, 9 catches, 168 yards, a couple touchdowns last night. Brother Martin's kind of ahead of that game early, Marshall. It's I would say it's 14-0. Jesuit kind of drives back. Jesuit takes the lead with not much time left, like maybe a minute or so, and they pooch kick it really short, like to the 40, right? And Brother Martin drives just enough. Their kicker kicks a walk-off, like 37-yard field goal to win the game. So a massive one. John Curtis gets a big one last night over Rummel. Yeah. That's a big one. Moving down the Bayou District, there were some big games. Coach BJ Young and South Lafourche, they get another win, so they moved to 3-1. Gosh, dog, this is slipping my mind. Shaw beats LCA last night, and I wouldn't have seen that coming.
Yeah, held the nice single digits, I think, 9 points or something like that.
They had 6 interceptions. So, saw that last night, 6 interceptions by Shaw. They were 0-3, but they played pretty much everybody.
Yeah, you said they were going to be fine. That's a great win over the Knights. For sure.
Yeah. And Hank's not scared to go play people. And I can't say that last week I wasn't going, hey Hank, man, like, what are you doing here? Let's schedule some guys to get some wins here. But he knows what he's doing. He's done it for a long time. And kudos to Shaw, man, going to get a big win against a very good football team.
So I'll get you out here on this one. What surprised you the most in the teams, the areas that you cover? We're pretty much through September. Next time we kick it off, it'll be October. But through September, what has surprised you the most, and what are you looking forward to the most in October?
Well, I'm not going to say this is a surprise to me because I get to travel in the summer and kind of go to these schools and talk to these coaches. The Slidell thing that's happening is not a big surprise. They're really talented. I'm loving it for the community over there. It's great. Everybody in the Slidell area is happy this morning. Pope gets a win. Salmon gets a win. They're at 2-2 now. Northshore gets a big upset over Covington, and Slidell beats Mandeville. So, they're happy. West St. Tammany's, not so happy this morning, right? And then Tangible Hose, kicking up with Hammond. So, it's an exciting time. We've got one more week, and then we're going to kind of swing into that district play. And I hate that part because everybody beats up on everybody. And, I always say your district record's 500 every week at North Shore Prep Report because somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. So it's different. But, one thing I will say that I was surprised at last night, and this is just kind of statewide, but, Catholic went up to West Monroe. I'm sure you guys are going to cover that. And West Monroe gets a big win. Proud of them and happy for that program to kind of get a big program win that they've needed for a little while now. Oh, and Marshall, one last thing. I have to say this. Terrebonne, keep your eye on those guys, right? They played an undefeated Hahnville team last night. Terrebonne wins again. Terrebonne beat St. James last week. St. James just put up 54 on Ponchatoula and blanked them. So, Terrebonne's got a chance. They've got some really good guys. They've got some Division I guys on that roster. And, they're a school down the bayou that's going to make some noise for sure. And then, hey, there's some big ones today in the Catholic League. So, it's Catholic League time. So every Saturday, it's it's another gauntlet of Friday and Saturday. It's a gauntlet of good games.
And anything stood out to you about the Catholic League so far in general?
No, they're all very, very good. In one word, no. I think it'll be interesting to see what Easton does because they're talented. They're on the lower end of that league, but they're so good. I would say I'm a little surprised by St. Aug, not because of their record, but because of how they've done it. They've been absolutely dominant. And I was talking to a Curtis coach the other day. They finished their last 2 games are Carr and St. Aug, so it's going to be a fantastic end of the year. Once again, you're going to have a team in that district that makes a run and might win a state championship that finishes 3rd or 4th in that district. Like it's going to happen.
Well, we 5-5 every week in district, but Mike McMillan is undefeated in his coverage of the Northshore. Check him out at Northshore Prep Report. Those guys do a great job. Mike, thanks so much for your time as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Marsh. Appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, great. Really a great win for Slidell over Mandeville, and it'll be interesting to keep an eye on everything happening in the North Shore over the regular season. Right now, we're going to bring on Caroline McPherson. She's the founder and publisher of SEC.com, covering everything happening in the Southeastern Conference. And, of course, that ties in a lot to what we're doing. So, Caroline, good morning to you. And I've got a few questions. I'm going to put you on the spot as it pertains to high school football and high school athletics in general. But first, I want you to tell us about the website and what we can find there and kind of what you're building over there on SEC.com.
Yeah, of course. Well, good morning to you too. So like you said, I started this website because it's easier to have things online, and I was doing everything in a book just because I'm so interested in sports. Like when it comes to college sports, it's just something I'm really interested in. So I was keeping up with all the stats and everything in like a notebook. And so I recently started a website where it has all the information that you could find anywhere else but in one place. So you don't have to go from SEC.com to ESPN.com and just even a few things that I find on other websites that may not have the other things I'm looking for. So it's kind of how I started the website, and there's a lot of really cool tools. I actually just started working on a newsletter for the game that happened last night when they stormed the field, but just like anything that's going on in the SEC, because ESPN really focuses on like the whole conference, and it's just cool to have everything in one spot and it's easy to access and look at.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because with this part, this part of the season, a lot of SEC teams, they'll get into conference and that's all they'll play for the rest of the season. And to your point, I mean, yeah, you can go to ESPN.com and find a score, find stats on almost anybody. But for people that are fans of SEC teams in particular, for a lot part of the season, this conference is all we need. As far as I don't necessarily care what a team across the country is doing. If I'm a fan of LSU or Texas or Alabama, the teams that are in my conference are the ones I want to follow. And although, like you mentioned, the trusty notebook, it always comes in handy. Don't ever abandon that. But I guess that's part of it. Is just if you're let's say you are a Tiger fan, well, it matters to you what every other team in the conference is doing. So I want to know, each week how everything's looking at. And I assume that's kind of how the site is designed, that each week you can log on and take a look at what happened the week before and what's coming up the next week.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of like, I'm going to nerd out for a second. Like you were saying, you want to keep up with the other stuff because the cool thing about the SEC is that at some point we're probably all going to play each other. You're not going to play every team until, they just had the schedule change.
Yeah, just released it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also on my website if you guys want to look at that. But so it's like I started keeping up with all the quarterbacks. And so I kind of know, okay, we're going to play Ole Miss. I have a background knowledge of Austin Simmons, what his stats were before he got injured, Cambliss's stats before when Austin Simmons got injured, and then, okay, well, which one are they going to play? Well, honestly, in my opinion, I hope that they play Austin Simmons because I think that Cambliss has been playing way better than him, but just things like that are easy to know. And as a fan, well, I go to LSU, so obviously I'm a fan of LSU, and it just kind of gives you like an insight of how you think the game's going to go.
And, you mentioned, being an LSU fan, being an LSU student, and college sports, college football has been your forte. According to the internet, you're best friends with Paul Feinbaum. So we're super proud of you there. But you have a particularly, a really unique and interesting introduction into athletics. You and I both studied it in college, and really it came from being an athlete, being growing up, being around sports. But this is a high school football show, and your high school experience was being part of a great high school that had everything you'd want from that experience. The missing link was a football program, and so you watched a team start from scratch, and little time at all, whether it was winning one game in the regular season or hosting a playoff game, filling the stands on campus. And so, kind of getting to see, gosh, wow, what football did to my school experience. It was probably something that was interesting for you. And then also, just where you grew up, like I said, you went to Darwin Woods where they were starting a football program, but Carolina, in any given day, you might have a family member playing for OCS, a friend from church that plays for Sterlington, and a neighbor that plays for Union, and they might have all been in the state championship in the same weekend. So you had a really unique exposure to really good high school football, just from where you grew up, and and even your days, putting up stats in powder puff games, I'm sure was legendary stuff. So how would you say that your exposure to high school football and high school athletics in general, how do you think that fed into wanting to study sports administration as a career, and also B, kind of getting the SEC bug to where you just want to focus your coverage on something specific?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that. I bet you didn't even know this. I went to OCS in second grade. So even before I even had any family that was playing football, I remember we would go to New Orleans and go to the Superdome and watch the games, and it was so fun. And so, but to preface kind of like what you were saying, I grew up around sports. Like you said, I went to a Darwin Woods, which was a 2A school. And so we were pretty much all multi-sport athletes. Like our softball team was our basketball team, was our powerlifting team. I played basketball from 5th grade until my sophomore year. And I played softball from the time I was 5 until I graduated. I did powerlift in my last 2 years. So I just kind of grew up kind of getting to see the different sports. It's funny because softball was my favorite sport to play in high school. But now, I can't tell you probably 2 LSU softball games I've watched, and I've been in college 4 years. Women's basketball is so fun to keep up with and so fun to watch, but it was not as fun to play. So it's kind of cool to see the differences in that. And so it's really funny. My mom and my dad and my grandpa, they were all softball coaches. So my dad coached me until I got to high school. And until I got to high school, my mom, my grandpa, and my dad were the head softball coaches at Darwin Woods. So when I came into LSU, I was actually an education major because I wanted to coach. And I was a dual certification, which is general and special education. And I thought that was what I wanted to do. I could coach. And I got second semester, I think, I started doing student teaching. And I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I love kids and I love working with kids, but not in the classroom. I don't like the whole trying to help them understand and learn if they don't understand kind of thing. So I changed my major to sports administration, and I haven't looked back. I actually love it. I love taking classes that interest me. And I'm in the Sport Administration Association Club at LSU, and it's really nice and helpful because they send out so many, any and every job opportunity, intern opportunity, volunteer experience We had a lot of people that worked the Super Bowl from Sport Administration Association and NOLA this past year. And so there's just so many opportunities. LSU played Florida a few weeks ago, and SEC Nation was there, and they invited the Sport Administration Club to come.
Cool.
So you get like all this intel, and I was like, yeah, I love this. This is what I want to do. My internship that I'm doing right now is at Traction. I don't know if you've heard of it, but just yesterday or day before yesterday, we had our Miracle League that comes and they play their games. And so basically it's children that kind of like wouldn't have the opportunity to play sports anywhere else. Children that have disabilities and want to be able to play, but not like in a competitive league. I mean, they don't really they play against each other, but it's not like they keep score like that.
Yeah.
It was really cool because the LSU baseball team came and it was fun to watch. Like I have so many cool videos and pictures
Wow.
from, and it kind of was like a light bulb moment for me where I was like, okay, I finally found something that can mix my interest and like all of my interest with
Make
sport.
you want to study.
Kids. Yeah. So that's kind of like a little bit of my background, I guess, on how I got here. But I feel like everyone I've talked to gets into the sport industry in a different way. I went to a sport development night at the Pelicans and Saints organization with the Sport Administration Association. And we got to listen to all these people on the board that were in different positions, from sales to fan engagement to every different category in sports you could think of. And they all had a different way of getting
it. And it's more than you realize. There's more that goes into the game than you might realize until you get into it.
Yes,
well,
sir.
so you mentioned studying. So today, I noticed you got your production assistant intern there with you. But so today's a work day for you. So you've got, LSU goes to Ole Miss at an early game, but you'll have stuff to do all day, games to watch, things to track. So what is a Saturday like on the clock for SEC.com?
Well, so in about, I guess it's already 8:30. College game day is actually I'm trying to remember because I know SEC Nation's at the Georgia-Oklahoma game, but college game day is not at a SEC game. I can't remember. It's on my website. I can't really remember exactly where they went, but they didn't go to a SEC game. But that comes on at 8:30, and it usually ends like by the time the first game starts, which I think is 11:30 today. And so I kind of watch that, kind of get their picks, see all the different games going on. Because even though like SEC Nation and College Game Day both, they're at one campus for that game, but they still talk about every other game going on. If you want to narrow it down to just SEC games, SEC Nation, Paul Finbaum, I think Tim Tebow is going to be, I think he's going to be there too. I'm trying to think of who all I saw on the list. It's all on my website linked but I have it also set up where on my website it updates. So like it's just the link. And so whenever they change it in their system, it's going to be the same link. So that's
on a day like today, are you watching as many games as you can, trying to get a feel for teams that are yeah. So it's a heavy day for you, and so you're gathering obviously scores, stats, things like that, but you're also trying to watch the games to feel like, okay, here's who I think is a sleeper in the SEC, or here's who I think might win, LSU versus Arkansas coming up or something like that. So your objective on Saturday or whatever games, college games are being played, is just to hyper focus on SEC teams and try to get a feel for how the conference season is going to go, at least from a football perspective.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of like, it's getting a lot easier now because I'm getting more familiar with the players and what team they're on and their stats, because I've been especially the quarterbacks. I've been keeping up with them every single week, comparing their week one stats. In my notebook, I had them all written out. I have them written out for week two. And it helps me kind of get a gauge on what team has what. And so now that kind of when I watch the game, I guess I'm trying to explain it, but I don't really know how. Like I love Vanderbilt. That's just like a side note. And I love Diego Papia. And I know his stats. I know the kind of quarterback he is. And I knew that they were going to beat South Carolina. And so that was just from keeping up with the stats and kind of getting a gauge on it. And then seeing them play against teams that aren't just like LSU played Southeastern and Tech. You can't really get good stats out of that. You can, but it's not going to be the same if you're playing Georgia, for instance, or if you're playing Arkansas or a team that's an SEC team. which is why I'm kind of excited about the new schedule change. But it's easier to gauge. And so when you see that same performance against different teams, then you're like, okay, this is a steady quarterback. This is a good, strong quarterback. And it's not just inconsistency, I guess is the word. Like Arch Manning, he covered the over in 55-0 on his own, like on their own points last week, but it was against Sam Houston. So you got to kind of weigh those things out and look at that. And that's just what I like to do. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing all day. Like I was telling you earlier, I just started writing an article in that game last night, and I'm hoping I have a lot more to write about today. So.
Well, you picked Vanderbilt over South Carolina 31-7, I think, in week 2. So we might have to bring you back and get you to pick a few high school games around the state and see if you can keep your hot streak going.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up. Is it Louisiana Prep? Where do they post the high school stats? I can't really remember now.
Those are, you can find them. Crescent City Sports does them. Go Preps does them. But
yeah, I'll have to start looking at those now so I can kind of get.
We'll get you a few games to pick. And like I said, you pay a lot of attention to recruiting around the state too. You've worked with Gridiron football before, and so we'll have to keep an eye on what knowledge you can dig up for us there. Tell us one more time. It's the letter C inside the SEC.com, correct?
Yes, it's just the letter C inside the SEC.com. Really easy to find. You can just type it in. But if not, it's also like linked in everything that I have social media wise. So
yeah. Well, look, Caroline, we appreciate your time so much this morning and the insight that you gave us. And hopefully we can keep you on board throughout the season and get your insight, not only but the SEC, but we need boots on the ground there in the Baton Rouge area. A lot of good athletes coming out of there.
The SEC. We got to see what we can build up on from Louisiana.
Hey, look, if Tate Hamby can make it from OCS to Vanderbilt, maybe you can too. Anything can happen.
He went at a good time too, because these past 2 seasons, they've been pretty strong.
Caroline McPherson, founder and publisher of SEC.com. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and hopefully we can talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Have a good morning. Get to work. Thanks to Caroline covering the SEC, and we'll I told her earlier this week we may have to get her to start working on some recruiting info and maybe pick a few games for us. But now we're going to bring on our good buddy from Gridiron Football, Jace Lejeune. And Jace, I believe that you got to cover. I know we've talked about him just about every week, and I hate to just bore people to death with Elijah Haven, but I've got to ask you about him because I believe you were able to see him in person, and I think he had what might be, at least on the stat sheet, his best game of the year on Thursday night.
Yeah, you also had the other game against Live Oak when he scored 8 touchdowns, but
that too, yeah, decent,
not too
decent
shabby on Thursday either. Just your normal average. 6 touchdowns in one game. He was phenomenal. Richard Montgomery was really a great surprise. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't hear about him before, but he's always been a defensive back. He's always played on defense, but he's gotten a lot bigger role in the passing game offensively. But he caught 4 of those touchdowns on Thursday night. So really that Haven Montgomery connection was really working out. And it did surprise me a little bit about how lopsided that game was. I mean, Dunham pretty much ran away with it early on. It was closer earlier than what the score indicated because Ascension Catholic had 3 opportunities inside the red zone to try to do something offensively, and they just weren't able to do it. So they got a couple of turnovers on downs, and that really, the defensive effort by Dunham really helped them get a big win over Ascension Catholic. The team refocused, regrouped. Remember, they lost against St. Charles Catholic the week before, so it was a big bounce back win there for the Dunham Tigers. And Neil Weiner picked up his 100th victory at Dunham as well, so a pretty good tidbit there. So yeah, I mean, great overall Thursday after it wasn't so much of a good of a week the week before against St. Charles Catholic.
A really good matchup last night. I didn't get to see any of it, but everything indicates that it was a great game. Catholic versus West Monroe. There's no way that I would have picked the Rebels to win that game going into the evening. Not anything against West Monroe, but just what Catholic has been the last 18 months and what I figured they would be able to do against West Monroe. I love the first-year head coach at West Monroe, DeMichael Dizer, but really nothing for Catholic to worry about. You take that loss, you watch film, you learn from it, move on. But a game that West Monroe can certainly build on, under this new coaching staff. But just your thoughts on that game overall, which, I mean, coming into the week was one of my favorite ones to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I talked to Coach Hudson Fuller last couple of weeks. Obviously they're pretty high on their team, and rightfully so. I mean, just look at their schedule, the gauntlet that they had to go through going into West Monroe is pretty ridiculous. It's pretty insane. You think about it. I mean, you start off the season, you play Destrehan, then you got to play St. Thomas More, you got to play U High. And, I think they were really on top of it, going into that game. U High, there was a lot of motivation from last year. And maybe, I mean, it's kind of hard to say this. I kind of unfathomable if you think about it. A little bit maybe of a letdown spot against West Monroe. If you kind of consider the travel, and West Monroe lost last week to North DeSoto.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're kind of thinking, the way we've been playing, you're pretty confident, but you gotta give a lot of credit to West Monroe. You gotta give a lot of credit to Michael Dizer, like you mentioned. What's the best way to set the tone for your first year as a coach at West Monroe? You go out and you get a big win. And I don't think you can get any bigger of a win than against Catholic High. So that was a huge, huge game. I'm not even sure if West Monroe fans even thought they would win that football game last night going in. So
it was a great win for West Monroe. A couple teams in the area that I don't know if we've talked too much about, but I did want to get your thoughts on them through kind of this non-district period. Dutchtown, always an interesting team, one of the largest, one of the largest schools by enrollment in the state. They get a good win over Prairieville last night, who's got a good coaching staff and probably will be, a team to consider in the next few years. Also, East Ascension, they took on Denham Springs, Coach Mathern over there at EA. Two teams that, again, big campuses usually can get good athletes and have had some recruits there in the past. With wins last night, where do you see those two teams factoring in the Baton Rouge area?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when it comes to district, because both those two teams are definitely going to have a role in that district. You talk about Dutchtown, you talk about East Ascension, Denham Springs, who East Ascension did play and beat last night. Denham Springs was playing some really good football. They beat Woodlawn 33-0 the previous week. And talked to Coach Mathern actually on her post game, or I guess like high school football show yesterday, and they lost that first opening game against Brother Martin to start the season, but it was a close one. And anytime you can go close with the Catholic League, go punch for punch, that's something you can build some momentum with, and they carry that. They won 3 straight games, so they're looking good. Dutchtown, they really cruised last night. I think they scored 42 unanswered points. So you factor them, of course, with Guy Mastretta over there at Dutchtown. They're going to be in the running in that district. You talk about East Ascension, not only with Coach Mathern, but the all-star coaching staff they got there with Dennis Gaines, who's the former Cecilia head football coach, now on the staff. You have Dane Chapanche, longtime Terminus Catholic head coach. He's on the staff. So, in terms of all-star coaching staff, they have them. And then don't forget about Santa Maria, because Santa Maria is still undefeated right now too. And that whole district, it's always been a fun district to cover. But I think it's going to be really fun this year because you got those players involved. Live Oak scored a lot of points this year with their quarterback, Caden Jones. So, yeah, there are a lot of players in that district, which is going to make it fun in the Baton Rouge area this year.
There was a matchup. You mentioned Cecilia, matchup there between state champs last night between Central and Cecilia. I believe I heard Ken Tran and his crew say that Max Gassett, the transfer from Ash, might have been might be getting snaps at quarterback. Now, I'm not sure if he started there, but it's natural to keep an eye on Central after what they did to Ruston last year in the finals, and apparently have a few options at QB.
Yeah, and Max is definitely very familiar with that situation as well because of what he had to deal through with Carson Sellers at Ag. So it's something that's like unfamiliar territory for Max. But it was only a matter of time before they really start getting him involved with the offense. That's the case because remember you high did that when a couple years ago when they had Emilio Picarella. They got him transferring over. They gave snaps to the other quarterback and trying to reel him in as well. So, I mean, it's something that's like not unfamiliar there, but 4-0 Central is they're continuing that momentum from the state championship game last year and winning that big state championship against Ruston. They've won some, games where they haven't been as dominant, but I mean, they're winning games. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, Denham Springs, I talked about them. I think they're going to be much improved this year. We talk about getting a win over Walker, Cecilia last night, and they won De La Salle against a really good De La Salle football team, 20-13 to start the year. But they're winning these football games. That's what matters. They got LCA next week, so it doesn't get any easier. I know LCA lost last night to Shaw. But, yeah, I mean, it's still a gauntlet coming up. And obviously when you get to that district with Catholic and Zachary is going to be a war for that district championship too.
I want to peek into St. James Parish real quick. Both Lutcher and St. James got really dominant wins last night.
Yeah.
I know I watched St. James last year and know that they brought back a lot of talent, not only at the skill positions, but on the lines as well. So no surprise to see St. James off to a good start, but Lutcher, keeping pace as well. A lot of good football being played in St. James Parish right now.
Yeah, and what a bounce back for Lutcher. They started the season 0-2, and I was there last week against Liberty, and they were able to get a big win over Liberty at Olympia, and I think that's really sparked the season for them. They followed that back up with a win too. So now you're at 2-2. You're feeling good about yourself. Dwayne Jenkins, I think he got his 100th win last night. About another theme.
Former St. James coach,
Yep. So former St. James coach at Lutcher. And, speaking of St. James as well, I did talk to Spencer Ferret when we did our show last night with the LHSA Network. And it looks like they did get back Juwan Jackson, their start quarterback back, which is huge news there for St. James. And when you get him, he's one of the top 28 quarterbacks in the state of Louisiana. So you get him back in the starting lineup. It makes a lot of dividends. I think it's a big bounce back there to get that win last night because they lost the previous week to a really good Terrebonne football team. We talked to Coach Tyler Lewis as well. So, those two teams in St. James Parish, they're going to be in the running. We got Lutcher and St. James, and I think both coaches feel really good about where they're at right now.
What else stood out to you around the Baton Rouge area, or really anywhere? What stood out to you the most after week 4?
Yeah, I mean, just basically just the overall standpoint. I mean, the Baton Rouge teams we talked about is pretty much the Baton Rouge teams we talked about. Plaquemine got a big win as well last night over Bruley, 20-12, and that really showed me a lot about Bruley because I knew they were undefeated going into that game, but I mean, this Bruley football team's really good. Actually, that loss showed me something there because Bruley, they've won their games, the first 3 games of the season, but they haven't played anybody like the caliber of Plaquemine. And seeing Plaquemine in the spring, like the Green Doubles or for real, and they can be a state championship team, semifinal team, and for them to get a win like that, I mean, for Plaquemine to get a win like that, kind of an ugly game, 20-12, really told me a lot about both teams. So Plaquemine is really good, and even though they lost the game, I mean, I still think that Bruley showed me a lot there by losing 20-12. I called the Episcopal game last night. They actually showed me something in the loss too. I actually came away more impressed, more confident on this Episcopal team with a loss than I did coming in. They lost against a really good East Feliciana team. Defensively, they've struggled throughout the course of the year, but their defense stepped up huge last night against East Feliciana. But at the end, East Feliciana, got to give them credit. They had a game-winning touchdown, 2-point conversion in the final minute to get that win, a 22-20 victory over Episcopal. but a couple good wins to start the season for East Louisiana. Anytime you beat Kentwood to start the season, you beat Episcopal to start the season. These are programs that are used to making deep runs and deep playoff runs. So Darius Matthews, give a shout out to him because they got a huge win last night for their program against Episcopal. So a lot of good things around the Baton Rouge area. We talked about some of those upsets, West Monroe being Catholic, Shaw being LCA. LCA was undefeated too. So yeah, you just never can let your guard down every single Friday night. So I think that's basically my biggest takeaway just from overall standpoint in week 4.
Last question. I know I asked you a kind of a LSU question last year involving an LHSA standout, but I got to watch a good bit of Juwan Johnson last week against Southeastern. He was, the talk of the LHSA for more than one season. So it was really cool to see him, and he's been kind of waiting his turn in a crowded locker room, trying to be a featured player there. But it was great to see Juwan not only get in the end zone and, be able to put some stats up against Southeastern, but also really just be featured in the offense and be really part of the game plan. I was so used to watching him play quarterback in the Superdome and for LCA. It was really, really neat to watch just the versatility, his ability to get in a single backfield and make things happen for their LSU.
Yeah, and really his breakout game, I actually called it. It was a sophomore year. It was a semifinal game against Newman, and a lot of people were talking about Arch Manning at the time because it was Arch Manning, and I guess talking to Trev Falk, it was some young sophomore Juwan Johnson, and at that point he didn't really know what he really had in Juwan, and then that was really the breakout game when he scored 5 touchdowns in one half. So it's been incredible to see his story and how he's progressed. Obviously breaking all those records at LCA, and you kind of find his niche there at LSU because remember, you start on defense, then he goes into the quarterback room, then he goes back to running back to quarterback. So it shows how much of an unselfish guy he is. Like whatever it takes for the team, he's going to do. And depending on what happens, I'm about to release my game preview just about 5 minutes from now on the LSU game. But depending on the availability of Caden Durham, like Juwan might have a more of expanded role in getting the start tonight or today against Ole Miss. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But if you're Brian Kelly and Caden can't go, like I would definitely give him the first crack at the starting running back position, and big opportunity there for Juwan to show what he can really do against Ole Miss on the road.
We'll let you go ahead and get to work on that LSU preview today. Gridiron Football Group, Gridiron Football USA. Check them out online. They do a great job. They cover way more football than you could ever think possible. Again, don't know how you do it, but somehow y'all get it done. Jace, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the Saturday, sir.
Absolutely. You do the same, Marshall. Appreciate the time as always. Looking forward to chatting with you next week.
Yep. See you, Jace. Thanks to Jace Lejeune, Gridiron Football. Thanks to Mike McMillan with the Northshore Prep Report. And thanks to Caroline McPherson of SeeInsideTheSEC.com. Check out all those sites, Northshore Prep Report, See Inside the SEC, and Gridiron Football. If you're a fan of football in Louisiana and you think that I sound anywhere close to smart, it's because I'm in tune with those guys and what they do. Thanks, everyone, for being with us today. We'll be back next week. Like I said, we'll continue to push into district play for some schools, and there's some good matchups still taking place in the non-district side of things next week. So I want to thank all our guests again, our sponsor, Gridiron Football, and 446 Sports for hosting us here. You've been watching the Red River Roundup, and we will see you all next week.